Yeah, so I was saying that
Sorry, just one sec.
sure.
There we go. All right. So before we got cut off, you were saying that a lot of your traffic was coming from AdWords.
Yeah, AdWords was the best way I found to get traffic early on. The
Okay.
thing is that when you start early with social media, you don't have many followers, so it can only bring so much. SEO is probably even more of a long play, so AdWords proved to be the best place to start.
Yeah, SEO is a very long play, but yet I think people are easily misled by these companies that say, like hire us for a couple of thousand a month and we'll build you lots of links and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't think that that strategy works, unfortunately. I mean, in my experience, and I'm no SEO expert, but for me, SEO number one boils down to quality content. I don't think that
Yes.
there's any shortcut around that. If you don't have quality content, then I think you can forget about SEO. In e-commerce specifically, because I'm sure it's different in in your line of business with a blog or a very
Mm,
content-driven site, but with SEO specifically a lot of it also has to do with your category structure and product hierarchy and basically your link structure.
yes. Yeah.
Because there are different ways that you can skin that cat. And I found that specifically in e-commerce, there are a lot of SEO risks. Like if you've got two products in the same color and they've got the same product description and you're getting penalized for duplicate content and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Um, I think that actually there's a lot in setting up your site right the first time and just spending a little bit of time using the plenty of free guides that there are out there just to make sure you've got a solid foundation and a good site map and a site that Google's going to be happy to crawl. And then it boils down to good content, good product descriptions, blog posts, those kind of things.
Sure. Tell me, is your background at all related to development? And did you know going into Cape Coffee Beans how to program, how to set up a site? Was that like part of your history?
No, not really at all. I'd played around with WordPress a little bit, but I don't know how to code at all. I mean, like, a
Mm.
tiny little bit of HTML, but that's, I wouldn't call that proper coding. I think I've learned a little bit more since launching it, but no developer, nobody with any proper development qualifications has ever looked at Cape Coffee Beans. It's all kind
Okay.
of stuff that I've taught myself as I've gone.
And are you at this stage the only guy involved in Cape Coffee Beans?
Well, I'm the only one on the payroll.
Yes.
But the truth is that the whole thing relies on a lot of third-party providers to whom I outsource a lot of the pieces of Cape Coffee Beans. I
All
mean,
right.
there are a lot of people who are actively involved every day, from a logistics perspective, from a collections perspective, and all those kind of things, particularly on that logistical side. So I
I
don't
can
pack the
imagine.
orders and do those kinds of things myself. But I'm the only Cape Coffee Beans employee at this stage. That's probably
All
going to
right.
change in the next couple of months, though.
Awesome. So I think let's start at the beginning and we'll just work our way through. And I think you mentioned that you are on Shopify. Is that still the case?
That is still the case. Yeah.
All right. And Shopify, I mean, that's a super easy platform to use, right? I mean, they pretty much create the store for you and you just load your product.
Yeah, I'm a huge Shopify fanboy. I can't rave about it enough. I did a bit. One of the things that I researched in the early days when I was in that minimum viable product phase was what platform to use,
Mm,
and it boiled down to two for me pretty clearly. It was either WordPress and WooCommerce, which I also think is a good choice, but Shopify for me just Shopify was built from day one for e-commerce.
mm.
So, it's a system designed entirely for setting up shops, and it's had a tremendous amount of success recently. And I love using it. I think it's made the whole thing so easy, and it's meant I've never had to rely on a developer or needed to really learn to code myself. I'm able to do whatever I need to do myself because Shopify is a great platform.
Mm. And I think that's so important is that, if you're not very technically adept, then it's a good thing to go for a platform that sort of does everything for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the other things about Shopify, which not enough people know about here in South Africa, is that there is a fantastic local distributor or reseller of Shopify called U Africa. Um, they're actually the same company that organizes the annual e-commerce awards, but it means that there's a local South African team that you can call on for help here, and they are all fantastic, and they've been a big
Oh,
help
that
to
is
me
awesome.
many times.
Mm. I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah,
so
and
Sorry, go ahead.
I was also just going to say that, you Africa, if you get your Shopify account through you Africa, you actually get better rates as well in local
Interesting.
rand currency instead of paying in dollars. So anybody interested in Shopify or e-commerce, I would definitely check you Africa out.
Oh, cool. I'll put that in the show notes. So then, did you look at Squarespace at all?
I didn't look at Squarespace. I've heard about it and I've come across it, but I have to admit it didn't figure in enough of the literature I was reading online for me
Okay.
to spend too much time on it, I must admit.
Recently, like it's been in the back of my mind that I want to add an e-commerce component to Betterman as well. So obviously at this stage, I'm hosted on WordPress, and I did like a little experiment where I just designed like a new website for the weekend, did like courses and stuff, and I integrated WooCommerce for the first time because, again, I was looking at like all these different options, and it was just such a breeze to integrate WooCommerce. It wasn't into Betterman; it was into a different site, but wow, so easy.
Yeah, I think WooCommerce is also a fantastic platform, and
Yes.
and and it, and
Yeah.
it's homegrown, right? I mean that
Mm.
Woo Themes and WooCommerce developed in South Africa recently had a really successful exit. So I guess you're supporting another South African startup who
Yeah.
use WooCommerce, but I've only heard good things. And to tell the truth, if I do another e-commerce business, I think I'd be keen to do use WooCommerce simply because I want to spend more time using it myself. But I've
Okay.
certainly heard a lot of positive reviews.
Cool. So then, obviously, once you have your site up and running, and you've decided on a platform, then I guess the next step would be payment gateways, right?
Yeah, so that's right, and that was pretty quickly one of the next things I looked at. So when you use Shopify, PayFast, which is another a local payment gateway, who I'm a big fan of, and I've really enjoyed working with them. They are integrated out of the box with
Mm.
Shopify. They're also integrated out of the box with WooCommerce for that matter.
Yes. Yeah.
But I went and their online application process was so easy. I think I was accepting credit card payments within 24 hours or something.
Mm. That's amazing. Hey, same experience when I did the WooCommerce integration. Did you look at any other payment gateways?
So not really, because at the time, and I'm not sure if this is still the case. At the time, PayFast was the only one integrating with Shopify out of the box, who was a local company,
Okay.
and it was pretty important to me to work with a local company. I'm a big believer in working with local companies and also trying to work with other small businesses because I think that they understand your pain a little bit more. Um, and PayFast, yeah, PayFast has proven to be everything I hoped for in that regard, and I'd heard good things. So yeah, I just
Are
kind of
you
went.
doing any international shipping?
I'm not. No.
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, that's the only other thing. If someone is going to do e-commerce and they're going to be selling internationally, you might be doing ebooks and stuff, and you might want to sell in dollars. Then I'm not sure PayFast wouldn't be the way to go then.
I wouldn't think so. No.
No.
I don't think that they. Well, I do think that they will accept international cards, but I think it's then converted back to rand, and that's probably not the way you want to go. I mean, I think the another good choice when you're looking at international transactions is PayPal.
PayPal.
And I actually, now that I think about it, I've done it a couple of times. I had people who were in the States who wanted to purchase gifts for people in South Africa but needed to pay in dollars. And I actually very quickly just set up a PayPal account to allow that to happen. And that integrated with Shopify pretty seamlessly as well. So I was able to accept a payment that way.
And how was the rest of the processing? Because I think with PayPal, the payment process is quite easy, but then getting your money from PayPal, was that easy enough?
No. So
Yeah.
admittedly that wasn't and I am with F&B and so which in theory should have made the integration quite easy, but
Mm.
there's a lot of documentation that you have to go through. So ultimately because it wasn't, it's not something that I use regularly, I just used those dollars towards other business expenses that weren't in dollars. Um, but I suppose that if you're getting the majority of your revenue that way, I don't know what the answer would be on how easy it would then be to get that money back into Rand and back into South Africa.
Yeah, I think you're a bit stuck, to be honest. I mean, I don't really think there are many other options for us at the moment, at least. Like you said, PayFast is a great local one to use, and then internationally, I think PayPal is really the only way to go.
Yeah, it seems to be, and at least
Mm.
it's very well recognized and works in pretty much any country. So yeah, I
Dude,
think it's
so
a good.
obviously a big problem then? So we've sorted out the platform. You have your payment gateway set up. I think maybe before we get to that, we need to get to the first sale, right? So now you need to get your website out there, and people have to actually come to your website. You have to get. I mean, we're working on a 2% conversion rate just as a like baseline. I don't know what yours is, but that means you need to get 100 customers through your site to get 2 sales. Um, and I think in general, actually, it's probably a lot less than that. But anyway, so how do you go from there? So your site is ready, your payment gateway is ready. How do you get that first customer?
Yeah, so at that point for me, once I was up and running, it was definitely those first few hundred visits, and the conversion rate in the first couple of days was definitely a lot worse than 2%. It's now
Okay.
better, but in
All
the
right.
early days, it was definitely not quite 2%. It was all AdWords campaigns. The thing is, in South Africa, it's not, AdWords and their ad platform isn't so saturated. Like obviously,
Mm.
if you're trying to sell electronics or something which is super competitive, then it can be very expensive to use AdWords. But part of the initial process before all of this is thinking about what space you want to go into. And if you're going into a space that's reasonably niche and not overly competitive, you can use AdWords pretty profitably in South Africa. So for me, it was just about launching campaigns around the brands of coffee that I was selling and around some more general coffee related terms. And that started bringing me traffic pretty quickly.
Okay. And how much were you paying like per click on average?
So the cost, the amount I'm paying per click has actually been pretty consistent throughout the history of Kid Coffee
Okay.
Beans. It's always been in, let's say, in between 2 and 4 rand a click. So,
All right.
at those kind of rates, you can afford to bring in a certain amount of traffic early on. Obviously, if I was still bringing in all of my traffic that way, it would make it more difficult to turn a profit. But in the early days, when you're talking about small turnover and small amount of traffic, it's a really great way to start building some momentum and then working towards those other things like a social media following, a newsletter database, etc.
Mm. And I think what's nice is that even if you're competing against the big guys, the Takealots and all those, they still only get one slot, in terms of ad space. So there's always space for more.
Absolutely. And the
Mm,
thing is that, there are a lot of articles you can read about it, but I've seen it myself, is you don't need to occupy the number one position in Google to sell.
definitely.
You can do a lot from position 2 and position 3. And
Mm,
the big guys will, pay a fortune to be in that position 1, but you don't necessarily need to compete with them on that.
definitely. And so you mentioned newsletter, and yours is great. I always love receiving it. Uh, do you do lead magnets? How do you get people onto your list? Do you have incentives?
Interesting that in the early days there was an incentive, and thank you for the kind words on the newsletter. By the way, I do invest a lot of time in writing that every week, but I do think that it's one
You
of the
can see
things
it.
that
Yeah,
I think it's one of the things that the existing customer base quite enjoys, and I think it's an important channel for e-commerce. But so in the early days, at the very beginning, I just put up a sign up form, and the other thing that I did is included an opt-in on the checkout from day one. So both of those things are things you can do from day one, which you absolutely should, because you might as well get all the subscribers you can from as early on as you can. I then introduced a sign up incentive,
hmm,
and I ran that for a few months. And then just before the festive period, I took it away to see if there would be a decrease in the sign up rate, and there wasn't. And
okay.
I never put it back. Now, I think everything is industry specific, but I think in the end, I realized that what Cape Coffee Beans was offering was unique enough that the people who were coming to the site and genuinely interested in what Cape Coffee Beans were selling weren't going to make a buying decision based on whether they could get 50 Rand off
Mm,
or not. And that they were interested in hearing what Cape Coffee Beans had to say, regardless of that sign up incentive. The couple of people that maybe I wasn't getting anymore were the people who were signing up only for the incentive and were always going to unsubscribe after, anyways. Um, and another example of that, by the way, is Yuppie Chef, which is an e-commerce business that I really admire. That used to be small, but now is quite massive. But they've also,
massive. I know.
yeah, and they also don't do newsletter incentive, you know? And I kind of thought about it and I said, if I'm targeting the right people and bringing the right people to the site, then I shouldn't necessarily have to give them anything to subscribe. There should be value in the newsletter itself, not just in a discount code or something like that. And so far, that's worked fine for me.
I agree with you. And but I must say though, for Betterman, I have like a few signups, and I've experimented a lot with like different incentives. And obviously, it's very different because I'm not selling something at this stage through the site. But I recently launched a course, so basically like a 5-day email series course that you can sign up for, and it'll take you through meditation, strength building. Like each day is a different topic, and the signups have just been crazy, like
Sure.
compared to just having something that says stay updated, you know. But like you said, it's very industry specific, and we're obviously playing in a very different niche.
Yeah, and look, if anything, I think that that maybe underlines the same point because the incentive you're offering is content, right? And I
Yes,
guess
yeah,
when I say that, you know, I wasn't implementing an incentive, I'm talking about a financial incentive because I found the content of the newsletter was incentive enough. But I do think that, you know, targeting newsletter subscribers based on good content is the right strategy because
for
ultimately
sure.
what you want is you want people on that list who are interested in reading what you have to say.
Tell me, in terms of selling through your newsletter, um, do you find that the conversion rates are quite good?
I do. But it's not. I wouldn't say that it's completely in a different ballpark from the conversion rates I get from other channels. It's always good. The conversion rates there are good. They're always a little bit better than the average, but not massively better than the average. I think that the newsletters also play another role. They play some intangible roles, in that it kind of keeps Cape Coffee Beans connected with the customers, keeps people
Mm,
aware of what's going on, what's new on the site. Because at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot of different products on the site now as well. It's just people aren't always going to happen across them unless you're announcing them in the newsletter and that kind of thing. But I've also noticed that there's an interesting pattern on the newsletters that a lot of people open them and click on them weeks after they've been sent.
okay.
And I think that that's showing that that content winds up being useful even afterwards. And so even if I'm not seeing that in a direct conversion rate, obviously the customers are still finding it useful. So then it's still worthwhile to get it out every week.
Yeah, it's been newsletters have been a strange thing to me because when I just started off, um, I always, you know, you have this thing about spam in your inbox, and people are getting so many emails every day. You like wonder what the worth is of a email newsletter. But then I just realized over time, there's certain guys that when their email comes into my inbox, I'll always click on it, like almost irrespective of what the subject line is going to say, because they've built trust and you want to hear what they are going to say. And you expect that once you click on that email, it's going to be something that's going to be worth your time. So, for example, James Clear is a big one for me. John Morrow, who is he writes on like blogging and marketing tactics, and then like yours as well. Like I won't even think twice when that email comes into my inbox, and that's made me put a lot of effort into my own effort. You know, like I want to make sure that when my email goes out, that should be the same effect. People should see it and just click on it immediately. And I think it's just such a big way to build trust with your audience.
Absolutely. I think email is a great channel, and I think
Mm,
people have said that it's not going to be important many times over the last few years, or it's going to become less important, but I don't think that that's happening yet.
definitely
I
not.
think for online businesses, it's a super important channel, and I think that one of the things that makes it such a good channel and such a trustworthy channel is that today newsletters are very clearly something you can opt in and opt out of
Mm,
easily, which means that as the merchant or as the site owner, you know that the people who you're sending to want to receive what it is you're sending, and equally those people have the trust of knowing that if they want you to stop, they can make it stop at any time. Um,
mm.
and so that just makes it a good, trustworthy channel from both perspectives and a good way to communicate with your customers.
Cool. So we've said AdWords. We've spoken a bit about newsletters. In terms of social media, what's been like a good channel for you there?
So I would say the most successful social media channel is Facebook. And I attribute that to a couple of things. I think one is that Facebook is just incredibly well penetrated in South Africa. There's, of the kind of affluent population that you would be targeting with any kind of online business, I think a huge percentage of those people are on Facebook and are pretty comfortable
Mm,
with Facebook as a platform. So one of the things I always say is you kind of have to be on Facebook. If you're not on
mm,
Facebook, it's almost conspicuous that you're not on Facebook. So I think that it's useful for that reason. The other reason is I actually use Facebook's paid marketing platform as well with some success. It definitely doesn't convert as well as search marketing, but it is a good way to bring in new customers, and particularly, finding new people who just visit the site and might want to subscribe to the newsletter and then maybe don't purchase for a couple of months but then do a few months down the line.
mm.
I find that Facebook's quite a useful channel.
And so, in your page, is that like a big thing for you, or is it more just the paid marketing?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. I don't think, for me, what the page and the paid marketing serve a different function, is that the paid marketing is bringing in sales and is bringing in customers, and the
Hmm.
page is giving a way for the people who want to have a sense of community with the business, that gives them a way to interact. um,
Okay.
and and the other function that I think the page plays is also kind of a social validation function. I think at the end of the day, when people visit a Facebook page, they want to see that there are other customers, there are likes, there are positive reviews. And I think
Mm.
Facebook's a pretty easy way just to show customers that have never heard of your business that yes, you are legitimate and they can trust you.
Yeah, it's just been so frustrating. Obviously, the with the page, the organic reach decreasing so much in the last couple of months that I don't know. I agree with you that when people come and ask me about Facebook marketing, I say to them to create a page, but also know that like it's not going to be a great channel for you because you post into nothingness basically. But if you're going to
Mm.
use Facebook marketing, I think that's a hugely powerful tool at this stage. Cheap clicks. And if you want to grow your page, then that's a good way to go. But I don't know if it's worthwhile spending your money growing your page in terms of likes, um, whereas you could be spending that money to send people to your site. Uh, like you say, social validation might be a good way, but I think if you're going to spend money on Facebook advertising, then it shouldn't be for likes. It should be for uh, sending traffic to your site.
I completely agree with you on
Mm.
that. And in fact, I ran a couple of like campaigns in the first month or two after setting up, and I never did again. And any money I spend on Facebook now is always to drive to a product or a newsletter sign up, or something of that sort, because that's a better way to kind of capture that customer in your community because
Mm.
you want them to be on your newsletter or something of that sort. But the interesting thing I found is that you then wind up getting a bunch of likes anyway. So you can
Anyway,
market,
yes.
yeah, you can market for likes and just get likes, or you can market towards content and products, and then you wind up getting a lot of likes nonetheless.
Yeah. And likes are cheap. So if you have a reasonable budget, maybe spend a little bit of it just to give it that credibility. Just so people can see that people are responding to your page. Have a couple of thousand likes on your page, but then the rest of the money should really just go into sending traffic to your site. When you do a Facebook ad campaign, do you do conversions or do you optimize for clicks?
I do a lot of conversion-based campaigns on Facebook.
Hmm.
So particularly when I think there are new products that a broader audience beyond the newsletter might be interested to hear about, or particularly something that's, that's maybe a special offer or something of that sort. Those will be conversion-based campaigns, and I'd say most of my Facebook event campaigns are conversion-based campaigns. But then I also occasionally do ones that are have a different goal. So, like for instance, recently for a couple of months, I just ran a signups campaign. So I
Okay.
suppose it's a different type of conversion, but not an e-commerce checkout. Um, and that actually worked very, very well. So yeah, I think for e-commerce specifically, if you're selling physical goods, that the conversion-based campaigns can do well. But it's good to throw something out there that's got a lower hurdle, where you're not asking somebody who's
Mm.
new to your business to part with their money right away.
Dude, to dig even a bit deeper into the whole e-commerce thing. So obviously there's a certain sales funnel, and for guys who aren't maybe very familiar with that, a sales funnel just refers to where someone sort of enters into your whole process, like where do they find your product and what brings them to your site, and then the checkout process leading up to the sale. So do you monitor that very closely and also have certain systems in place to follow up with someone who drops out at certain places during the checkout process?
I do, absolutely. So there's three parts to it for me. One of them, which I think is pretty relevant for anybody setting up an online business, is having Google Analytics properly set up and setting up conversion funnels in Google Analytics. So that's one of those things that I think it's a really good idea to invest in the early days, because that data becomes more and more useful as you have more of it. So I spend a lot of time in Google Analytics, perhaps too much sometimes, because it becomes quite addictive to just look
Becomes
at,
super addictive.
yeah, you're just constantly looking at what people are doing, where are they dropping off. But I spend a lot of time about looking at traffic sources, looking at landing pages, what are the bounce rates, what are the engagement rates. I do look at my conversion funnels. Sometimes my conversion funnels have alerted me to problems that I wouldn't have been aware of
Mm.
otherwise. So I think that that's very important. The second component is that Shopify has its own kind of funnel-based analysis, and generally, it coincides with what Google says. But obviously, as it works on a different mechanism, sometimes you can see things that you wouldn't necessarily see within Google Analytics. Um, and the final part of that is that Shopify does a great job of monitoring abandoned checkouts, and has a system built in where you can trigger an automated email to the person
Okay.
who abandoned the checkout. And I activated that as soon as the functionality came out, because it didn't exist when I first launched. And it's really effective because you do get abandoned checkouts, especially with things like 3D secure, the whole
Mm.
verified OTP problem. Some people just get stuck and they don't manage to make that payment. So Cape Coffee Beans will send out an email saying, sorry, we can see you tried to make a purchase. If you've changed your mind, don't worry. But if you do want to continue, here's a link so you can go straight back to the payment page. And don't you want to try another payment method this time? Something along those lines.
Okay. And are you doing remarketing as well?
I have, but I have to admit that I haven't done as much of it recently. Look, remarketing is one of those things that I think it's kind of it's black belt online marketing stuff, and I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means. And basically, every time I've tried to dip my toe into remarketing, I've found it hard to get as good a return on investment as I did with my other channels. Because at the end of the day, it's an additional cost, right? It's not just a new cost that's bringing in
Yes.
customers. Now, part of that for me is that I've been lucky to have pretty good conversion rates all the way through. So I suppose when you're already starting with a good conversion rate, there's only so much that you can grow it. Um, I have dabbled with remarketing. It is probably something I'll tackle again, but it isn't something that I've found has been super essential to Cape Coffee Beans so far.
Dude, just out of interest, what is your conversion rate?
So that's something I'm happy to share. I mean, it
Cool.
obviously it varies seasonally quite a bit,
Yes.
but it's always kind of at least 3%, and in the good seasons, like around the festive season, I've seen it go to 4.5% or so.
Jeez. That's excellent, eh? And you know, the
Yeah.
first time I ever got involved in like conversion rates, um, my brother was actually he was doing I think he was working for Duo at the stage, and he was telling me like from their side, like offline marketing, they were seeing like a 2% conversion rate. And it was just interesting to see like how it sort of uh carried through to online as well. And then I thought, geez, like you're working with a 2% conversion rate. That's like it's so pathetic. And then once I started really getting involved into digital marketing, I just realized that, once you hit 2%, you're actually doing great. So once
Mm.
you're at 3% and 4%, that's you flying. It's very, very
Yeah. I
good.
mean,
Mm.
I think that the reality is I was talking to another entrepreneur recently who kind of said, 30 people visited my site today and nobody contacted me. How can that be? Unfortunately, the reality is that, people do. They shop around, they browse, and
Mm.
and it takes a lot of touch points before a customer will convert. And I went through the same process you just described, whereas at first you expect that, of course, a high percentage will convert, but that's just not the reality. And I
Mm-mm.
guess if you think of your own behavior, you probably spend a lot of time browsing on sites that you don't buy from. And that's the reality. You've got to attract a lot of customers to convert a few.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, so you really do need, at the end of the day, you need thousands of people to come to your website if you're going to be making money off it.
Yeah, I think that's
Mm.
right. I mean, obviously, the other part of the equation is also when you convert, how much are you getting from that conversion?
Yes.
Um, it's one of the things that makes me quite like physical goods e-commerce businesses is that, if you picked your product category well, you can get a lot out of that transaction value. I don't mean in the sense that you're trying to get a lot out of the customer, but if you're selling goods that are worth a certain amount, that can make each conversion worth that little bit more to you.
Mm.
And so it means that you can run a profitable business at a smaller size.
Yeah, and really the takeaway for me from what you've been saying now is that make sure that you have a very solid foundation. And I think if you have a good platform to start off with, like Shopify, that's been well coded, and you take time to really think through your product descriptions, then in that way you're optimizing SEO already. But then from there to know that you're going to have to you have to spend money to bring traffic to your site until SEO eventually takes over and you do start getting organic traffic to the site. You have to be willing to pay to play.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately the way it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Without paid marketing, there would be no Cape Coffee Beans. That I'm pretty
Mm.
confident in saying.
And I think I run about at this stage um, probably about 50 or 60 rands worth of Facebook ads a day, just recurring, like it's just running in the background. And it's only going to that course that we were talking about. And I think I add probably about 30 to 40 new emails a day to my list, just doing
Wow.
that.
Wow.
And yeah, so I mean, it's so worth it, especially at Facebook for me at least, being a content driven site. And yes, I can understand AdWords being a e-commerce site. So then moving from there, so you've made your first sale. Now it needs to actually get to the customer, and I think shipping is such a pain. Where do you start?
Yeah, so I have to admit that logistics was kind of the expertise that I brought to Cape Coffee Beans. It was one of the things that I
Okay.
knew I knew more about than some of the other areas that I had to get stuck into. Look, I think logistics and fulfillment for physical goods is incredibly important. I think a lot of physical goods sites, a lot of e-commerce sites forget that and think it's all about the website.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, the fulfillment and execution is what might retain or lose a customer for you. Um, and I think physical goods e-commerce businesses actually, at the end of the day, whether they like it or not, all require repeat business to be profitable. You can't make a profit in physical goods if you have to go and market and find new customers for every
mm,
sale. So I think fulfillment is super important. Look, I think there are a couple components to it. One is that your internal processes have to be well mapped, and they have to be tight, and you have to be on top of where in the stage of the process each good is. And part of that is just having that personality of being quite a structured and organized person, as most ops people are. But also it's working with the right partners. So for me, there are two partners that are really important in that. One is a local company called Wumdrop. They're actually a local startup as well, and I share offices with them in Cape Town, but they're based in Joburg as well.
okay.
They do all my inbound stuff, so they go and collect the coffee at the roasters every day. But they also do deliveries for me, and they're a very cool model where it's on-demand delivery. They've got guys on scooters who you can they've got an app, they've got a website, you can summon them and dispatch very quickly, which means in Cape Town, sometimes I can do same day delivery now, like the
Oh,
big
awesome.
guys do, but at a fraction of the cost. So I think that's important working with someone local like that. But then you also need just a reliable national player to work with. And for me, that's Courier It. So Courier It, their branding is yellow. You've probably seen their vans if you live in a main
Mm,
center. I worked with them in my days at Zando, so I certainly know that they can deal with very big volumes as well. But they've been fantastic for me as a small player as well. And so I trust a lot with them because at the end of the day, they're doing my packing and dispatch and fulfillment to my customers, but they do a great job. Um, I don't think that logistics is something you can skimp on. I hear a lot of people trying to go for the lowest price, and I think that that's a bad idea.
So, do you then take the order and courier it will then just go and collect it from the roaster and then do the delivery from there?
No, so the process is a little bit more complicated than that, actually.
Okay.
So the once a day PO purchase orders are sent to each one of the roasters, and then they prepare that coffee for the next day. One Drop, which is the other service provider I mentioned, because they've got guys who are on scooters who are, can find parking more easily, can be deployed more quickly. They do the collections, which are obviously
Hmm.
lots of small packages, and then the coffee for each day then comes into the office that I sit in, which I also share the space with One Drops managers, and then that then gets consolidated and sent to Courier, its dispatch center, which is near the airport. Um,
Okay.
Courier Courier it then also holds all my equipment inventory because we don't hold inventory of the coffee, but we do hold inventory of the equipment so that that can be
Mm.
dispatched quickly. And then they do all the packing. So they basically get like an output of the weighbles for the day, and they do all the packing and dispatch to the customers.
Okay. All right. Geez, so it's quite an operation, hey, to get all the shipping done.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, it's an important component. It's
Mm.
I'd say I probably spend a lot more time worrying about the logistics and fulfillment than I do about the website.
I could imagine. And I'm sure you don't actually deal with many returns though, because I
No,
mean, coffee is a consumable. So,
yeah, I'm pretty lucky in that regard, I have to
mm.
say. I mean, look, it does happen occasionally, and certainly, if somebody receives a piece of equipment and there's a manufacturer fault or something of that sort, we'll go and collect that and send that back, and obviously that is costly, but you have to do it.
Yes.
Um, but I'm lucky. The return rate is very, very low, but it's got a lot to do with the industry. In
Mm.
other industries, you'll have much, much higher return rates, and then you've got to kind of build that into your costs.
Cool. So, just what has been the biggest challenge for you in getting going? During the whole process, everything that you've been through.
I think the first one was just momentum. I think
Mm.
the time that it took from starting to set up the site to getting the first order from somebody I didn't know was shorter than the time from when I started talking about it to the time I started setting up the website. I think just going and getting started. I mean, that's the first big challenge, and the only thing I can say on that is just the whole lean principle of just get something out there, get a minimum viable product out there is so right because once you're going, it's much easier to continue. I find. Um, and that continues to apply, by the way, because there's always like new projects, new things to try, new product lines. I think the important thing is just don't procrastinate, get going, and that's a constant challenge as an entrepreneur. At least it is for me.
Yeah,
um,
I think there's two very important things. The one is, and they sort of tie together. Just patient practice, knowing that it's going to take time, and that you have to sort of keep chipping away at it every day. And
mm,
then having realistic expectations of your business and not thinking that it's just going to happen quickly because all of a sudden you're on the web and exposed to millions of people.
yeah, and that second one is exactly what I was going to mention next. Is that
Mm.
there's this unfortunate mentality that e-commerce or online business should be easy. Once you build a great website, they will come. um, that's just not the reality, and
No
and you
way.
have and you have to spend a lot of your time thinking about how to connect with the right people. In physical goods retail, you at least have the benefit of, like, if you pick a good location, then foot traffic's going to come. um, there isn't really that equivalent online, at least not that I've seen. You've got to be finding ways to direct people to your site. And that, yeah, that was definitely one of the other big challenges, is just building up, a steady stream of traffic and a customer base.
And so going forward, where's your mind at? Like, do you think that maybe content could play a big role for you in the future at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I've always invested in content in terms of the product descriptions.
Mm.
some people like to tell me that my product descriptions are too long, but I always point out that the people who want short product descriptions probably aren't going to read them anyway.
True.
And the people who want the long product descriptions are grateful when they are there on the page. Obviously, you can overdo it that way sometimes, and I probably, if I'm being self-critical, have a tendency towards the wordy side. Um, but but I do think that if you're selling physical goods or you're selling any product, you need to have good content describing what it is. Like I see a lot of physical goods e-commerce sites who copy paste the same content that they'll find on the manufacturer's website. And that's just a bad idea for a lot of reasons. But that's the first place. Now, Cape Coffee Beans does have, a blog and some blog posts and articles, and some of those have been really useful. So, for instance, there's a page that explains what to look for in a coffee grinder, and that drives a lot of coffee grinder sales, unsurprisingly. So I think, yeah, putting good content out there. I mean, it's one of the ways to differentiate yourself from the big guys, to show that you really understand your product category and provide useful free content to your customers, even if what you're ultimately hoping to do is sell them physical goods. So in the future, I definitely want to do more content wise. I think the other thing that I realize I haven't done much of, because it's not the domain that I'm as comfortable with, is more offline stuff. And that's one of the things that I hope to do in the future for Cape Coffee Beans is, I mean, certainly, like doing events or doing, I've thought about doing, I don't know, an AeroPress workshop or that kind of thing.
That's awesome. That's a great idea.
It's something that I'd love to get started on. In the long term, I also could see a physical retail presence for Cape Coffee Beans as well.
Interesting.
But also just trying to get involved in offline media. Now, offline media becomes expensive quickly. But I've realized, because I understood online quite well, I've focused almost all my energies online. And I think the reality is there are a lot of consumers in South Africa that don't think about online. So you've got to try and get them via offline channels.
Yeah, and I mean, you're in such a niche market. I think it's. I don't know. You'll obviously know better than me, but I feel that coffee is still in its sort of infant stages in SA.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
We're very lucky in Cape Town in terms of we've got an incredible concentration of great little roasters
Yeah,
here.
huge coffee culture.
Yeah, but and I think that there's an emerging coffee culture in Pretoria, and Durban's always had a bit more as well, but it's still small. And one of the ways that you can see that is if you look at the volumes that our famous roasters roast every month, and you compare that to what the Scandinavian or American or other European roasters are roasting, it's tiny amounts.
Yes.
We're not drinking huge amounts of coffee in South Africa yet, but it's definitely growing. It's growing all the time. And one of the other things that I see is I'm constantly getting approached by new roasters who are opening up, which is fun. It's always interesting to see what's new and coming, but there's clearly momentum building in the industry, and I think that can only be a good thing.
That's awesome, dude. And like I said before, I really love your brand, and thank you for taking the time to come onto the show and just share some of your experience in e-commerce and setting up a shop, and some of the challenges that you faced. I know the guys will really appreciate your insights that you've shared with us.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been good to
And
chat
thank
with
you for being so patient, because for those of you listening, we spent about half an hour just trying to connect after the previous night being load shedded. And actually, Phaedon is currently being load shedded. He's doing this interview on his phone. So thank you for making the effort and taking the time.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a good ad for Apple technology in the end, right? We made it work.
True. Dude, have an excellent night, and I'll let you know when this is out.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, Eric.
Cool. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cool, dude. Sorry, Phaedon.
Yeah.
Hey, you still there? Sorry, no, I just want to end it, and then we can just continue talking a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you so much, dude. So that's it. It'll probably be out, I think next week actually. I've scheduled.
Cool.
Yeah, this one is gonna probably be out Tuesday or Wednesday.
Awesome. I hope you found
Yeah.
it useful.
No, awesome. Yes, and like I said, especially for me, also wanting to get into e-commerce, it's just nice to hear different opinions and different thoughts on the process, because I think SA is a good market for e-commerce at the moment.
I think so too, hey? I mean, some
Mm.
people have negative things to say about it, but at the end of the day, I think the opportunity is still here, right? Because it's not hyper competitive yet. It has some challenges that the mature
Mm.
markets don't have, but you can still carve out a niche. I mean, I don't know if I could have launched a Cape Coffee Beans in London or in New York. You know,
True.
it would have been a lot more difficult. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I think there are a lot of exciting niches to carve out.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and we
But I
don't.
must say, listening to you talk about like the shipping, I was contemplating doing physical products, but at this stage, I'm actually just thinking to do digital products because you're dealing with the shipping part of it. It just sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, look, it's a lot of work. As I said,
Yeah.
you know, I've got the advantage in that like logistics was the bit that I knew when I walked into this, and marketing
Mm.
and websites and things was what I had to learn. It's a lot of work, and I think that it's part of this thing, you know, that people overlook. But I've also kind of made my own difficulty because I picked an industry in which you can't hold inventory. I mean, you know, with the coffee,
Mm.
um, that makes things a lot more complicated. I think if you're operating in a space where you can buy inventory and obviously it needs to be affordable as well, but you can buy and hold inventory, it becomes a little bit easier. Because then, you know, you literally, because then you can outsource it entirely. I don't know if you've come across Parcel Ninja, for instance. They're based up in Joburg, actually. Um,
Partial Ninja.
Parcel Ninja, you should
Oh,
check them out. In
Parcel
fact,
Ninja.
yeah,
Parcel Ninja.
in fact, if you can get him, Justin Drennan, the owner, would be an awesome interview guy on e-commerce because he's part of the team behind Want It All as well. But he's set up Parcel Ninja, which is fully outsourced e-commerce fulfillment. So you literally you buy your stock, you send it to his warehouse, they inventory it, warehouse it, and you just transmit orders to them, and they package it and ship it out like
That's
completely end to
awesome.
end. Now, it's got to make sense because obviously there's a cost associated with it. So it's got to be products worth, you know, with sufficient value to make that worthwhile.
Mm.
Um, but, you know, I can't use something like that because I've got this thing about the coffee coming in every day. Um, but if you were just buying, you know, I don't know what it might be, fitness products, I don't know, or something, you could use a
Yes,
fully
yeah.
outsourced solution,
Mm.
which would make it a little bit easier.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and I've heard of Justin Drennan before. Yeah, he's quite a big player, right?
He is, and he's
Mm.
a cool guy as well. I mean, I haven't met him in person, but I've chatted to him on the phone a couple of times, and yeah, especially if it's like e-commerce. I mean, he's one of the guys that's been doing e-commerce in South Africa the longest because
Yes, yeah.
you know, Want It All has been going for a long, long time, and yeah, he's an interesting guy to chat to.
I wonder how the whole space has shifted with the Kalahari and Takealot acquisition.
Yeah, it's interesting, hey, is that when
Mm.
it first happened, I said to myself, do we now have an Amazon to contend with?
Yes,
Uh,
yeah.
and I don't think we do yet. Hey, it's just that I think that it's actually they're now so busy dealing with that integration that they're almost kind of not going to be as big of a threat for the next year or two for the niche guys while they refocus. But but I think it means that look, like trying to compete in broad e-commerce, like being a one-stop shop for everything, I think that that's a fool's errand these days. Like take a lot, we'll
Mm.
beat you at that.
I
Um,
agree.
but I think it creates an opportunity to like double down on specific niches because at the very least they're bringing up the profile of shopping online generally.
I agree, and I think niche is definitely the way to go. Hey, people always want to. You can always expand later and add products and add things to your offering, but I think initially just to get those first few sales and get like a feel for it, it's the best thing to do. Like into a niche, go into a specific niche.
Absolutely, and you know, and if it's a defensible niche, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about Take a Lot trying to do what I'm doing in coffee
No,
because
I don't think so.
it's not big enough to be of interest to them.
Do you have any competitors at the moment?
Um, at the risk of sounding a little bit arrogant, not really. There are other people who've tried to do this kind of thing, but they've kind of come and gone. Um,
Okay.
and I think that part of the problem is that they didn't come at it from an e-commerce angle.
Mm.
if that makes sense. Or a business angle. They came at it much more from like a concept website look and feel kind of angle. And there's a few who did a great job on that side, but I nobody else who got into it was ready to deal with all the logistics headaches and stuff that you mentioned that sounded difficult. And coffee, unfortunately, I think comes with those headaches.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, yeah, I mean, your site has been great, eh? And especially, I think your newsletter game was really strong. And I don't know, you're saying that the conversion rate hasn't really changed if you were offering an incentive versus just having it the way it is now.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe it's just that I've offered the wrong incentive. I have to admit, as you were saying that you were
Mm.
offering this free course, I'm thinking to myself, huh, I haven't tried that angle. It's like maybe there could be a content-led incentive. But the truth is that the majority of the newsletter subscribers are just people who've bought before.
Yes.
Um, there are, and because even when new people sign up who haven't bought, then they eventually buy, and they almost feel like customers rather than content subscribers. And
Mm.
because Cape Coffee Beans doesn't have a shop to visit, that's kind of their way to visit the shop. um, One of the things, I mean, I didn't mention this while we were doing the recording, but it's like physical goods e-commerce for me in some ways is more like physical retail than it is like other online businesses.
Okay.
It's a lot of the principles are a lot more like that. And I think that that's why that newsletter becomes so important, because that is the way that people visit your shop, or at least get reminded, because they're not going to walk by it. That newsletter
Mm.
is that invitation in.
I would just think that, for a lot of guys, like I think once you get into coffee, it really hooks you, and you want to know more and more. It's, I guess it's in a way like wine. So if you were educating me, if I sign up for one of your free giveaways, it might just be on making good coffee at home or how to make cheap coffee at home. And at the third email, you tell me, oh, by the way, so like using this AeroPress, here's the link to the AeroPress. um, I don't know. It'll be interesting to actually know how that would feed into sales.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Educating,
It's a good point.
educating customers. Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess when I talk about doing physical events, that's part of the angle as well. Is
for
come
sure.
come learn how to use an AeroPress, and then maybe you walk away purchasing an accessory, or purchasing your second one, or purchasing your first one. Um, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I just think that generally that principle of providing people information and then they reward you by becoming customers,
Mm.
that's something that works very well in all types of online businesses.
It's very interesting. So, like, I've been busy with Better Man. I think now for it's coming up on a year now. And during this whole time, I have really not been interested in selling anything. It's really just been building the audience and trying to get feed to the site and people signing up. And so then about 2 weeks ago, me and Jock Fagan did something together where we said, cool, we're going to do a course. And so we thought we'll just pre-sell it. And then if enough guys buy, then we'll go through and do the course. And I think we didn't put much effort into it. It was bad timing for both of us, really. But we got 100 guys to the sales page,
Hmm.
and we converted three of them at a ticket price of like $800 per person.
Wow.
And yeah, and that just showed me the value of, so, and how they got into that sales funnel was through webinars. So we were marketing the webinar. The guys joined us for the webinar. At the end, they got the link to the sales page, and then I mean that was like the only interaction. But I even recognized the names who bought, and they were guys who were interacting with me regularly over time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think building trust with your audience through things like email and webinars and giveaways and stuff. I think it's super important. Jeez, I just couldn't. Selling an $800 item is huge for me. I mean, it's quite expensive on just eat online,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mm.
No, that's cool. And I was going to say, I didn't realize that Betterment had only been going, you said not even a year yet.
Not even a year, no.
I have to say, you give the impression of having been going a lot longer. I think, the site's very cool. The concept's
It's
very
awesome.
cool. And also, I mean, like, obviously you interview people in a lot of different domains, but I've certainly enjoyed the interviews you've done with some of the coffee people.
Mm.
and it's cool that you've been able. I mean, Ishan, SA Barista Champ, David Domde
Yeah,
being
he's
one of
awesome.
the big names. So it's cool. No, I mean, it seems like it's going well.
Yeah, I just need to. I just have like a need to monetize it.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
it's a side project, you know. So it's not that that I need the money from it. I just want to make money from it. I don't know. It's a strange
Sure.
place to be. Yeah.
And
Phaedon.
and
Yeah. Sorry.
so I was just going to ask, affiliate marketing, like pointing to, other people's, online sites that are selling things, is
Um,
that something you've looked at?
y- I've thought about it. And I'm not quite sure, to be honest. Maybe in certain domains, yes. Um, if it was going to be physical stuff, then I think that would be the only way I would do it. Because
Yeah.
I don't really want to make a lot of extra work for myself, to be honest. So
Sure.
if it was a physical product, then yes, I think that would be a way for me to go. But apart from that, my mind at this stage is just at creating my own products. And when I was telling you about that other website that I set up, I went through the process of installing WordPress and then installing Sensei, which is a course management plugin
Mm.
on top of WordPress, and then integrating that with WooCommerce. And it's so awesome. Like you get someone coming to the site, they sign up for a course, they pay for it, then they get special access to the course, and they can literally go like lesson by lesson by lesson going through the course. So professional, like amazing setup. So I'm kind of leaning towards that, like ebooks, courses online, and then maybe some Better Man merch, t-shirts, whatever. But that's like back in my mind. And then yes, affiliate marketing for physical products would be an option as well.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Look, content is clearly your thing. So I
Mm,
suppose, it makes sense to focus on that, right? Because you're
mm.
obviously producing a lot of great content. So I'm sure that there's an angle there somewhere.
Yeah, look, I mean, the guys have been giving me lots of feedback. All the emails I'm getting are like related to fitness and related to uh, training, dieting. So yeah, no, I've gotten a lot of feedback regarding that.
It's good. It's good.
Hmm. But listen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll pop your email once the interview is ready to go.
Cool. Sounds good. No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It was definitely good to
Cool.
chat.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Keep well, Eric. Let's stay in touch, eh?
Cheers,
Cheers.
Peyton, for sure.